Welcome to the Boy from Yesterday podcast. Before we move on with chapter 14, I would just like to remind listeners to please leave a rating and a review of what you like so far about the story, because your ratings and your reviews really help a lot to spread the word about sharing the story here, and also to subscribe. And we really want to spread the word and so that more people can enjoy the story. So enjoy what's coming up. And now chapter 14, The Hospital, Part 2. Tom followed the nurse down the hall, and she pointed toward a small exam room with an exam table in it, a small counter with a sink, and a chair on roller legs. A stand with a computer terminal and keyboard stood in one corner. Tom looked outside the window and saw people walking by, again in a strange collection of various forms of dress. Tom looked at the computer monitor and wondered why it looked different from the machine that had the stage play in it that he saw in the waiting room. "Dr. Kent will be in just a moment. Just have a seat, please," she said, and smiled a rather bland smile, and left the room and closed the door behind her. Tom didn't sit. He was too anxious to, and looked around the room and out the window and saw the horseless carriage machines drift by on the street of black rock. The room was so white and so sterile, he thought. He played with his hat in his hands, twirling it around and around. The room was quiet except for the buzz of the electric lights overhead and a faint sound of voices out in the hall. He tried to think what to say when the doctor came in. It was all so much to take in at once. He already just wanted to be with Laurel, as she seemed nice, and even if she did dress strangely. He thought to himself, I can do this, I can do this, I can do... His own thoughts were cut short by the doctor entering the room in a white lab coat. It was a woman with long dark hair tied up in a tight bun. She had light makeup and had a stethoscope around her neck, which Tom didn't recognize, but he knew from its rubber tubing and silver end that it was probably a medical instrument. The woman extended her hand. Tom gently took it and was about to bend down to kiss it, but she pulled it back quickly. "Tom? Hello, I'm Dr. Kent. I'm the doctor on duty tonight. You are having a good time at all the Chesterfield Day festivities, I assume?" "Always a nice tradition," she said, looking Tom up and down. "Getting into the costume spirit, I see. That's as good as I've seen, really. Nice detail. So authentic, right down to the shoes." "Have a seat, please," Dr. Kent said, and she indicated for Tom to sit on the exam table covered in white paper. Tom cautiously sat on the edge of the table and noticed the crinkling sound the paper made, and didn't fully sit his weight down. Dr. Kent sat on the little stool in front of the computer terminal stand and started typing. She looked up at Tom. "So, I hear you hurt your head on something? Tell me what happened." "You're a doctor?" Tom said. Dr. Kent looked a little annoyed. "Yes, for about 20 years now, actually. You were expecting someone else?" Tom realized there would be many things that would look new to him, and the fact that women were doctors in this time would have to be one of them. "I'm sorry, man. I've just never seen a lady doctor before." "Where's the paper?" Tom asked. "The what? Which paper?" said Dr. Kent. Tom looked at Dr. Kent's hands typing. "Well, I beg your pardon, miss, but your new typewriter there doesn't have any paper in it." Dr. Kent stopped typing and looked up quizzically at Tom. Our clinic has had a paperless system since we opened. It's a very green building. We won an award for that. And, this is a computer terminal," she said, typing more notes into the on-screen electronic chart. Tom glanced at the screen just as he saw the words, "PT presents with possible psychosis," appear in white type on a green background. Tom knew he had said something he probably shouldn't have, but didn't know what he could say that wouldn't sound strange to someone in this time. He didn't know where to begin, and he certainly didn't want to tell the truth of what he'd been through to a doctor, fearing that she might think that he'd gone mad, but he wanted to make the most of it. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," Tom said. "I come from a small town, and I guess we're behind the times on a lot of things." He paused again before he said anything else. An awkward silence followed, and Dr. Kent smiled slightly, but just the tiniest bit annoyed. "Well?" Dr. Kent said, cocking her head, glancing at her watch, and looking at Tom more intently. "Oh, well, I'm just visiting town. I came by myself. A friend of mine from my boyhood is sick a ways away, see, and where I live, and he lives too. My uncle and I run a store, and he got thrown from his horse, and his leg is all in a bad way. So I came over to see if I could pick up some kind of salve or medicine, and then I've stayed for the fair, and then Tom struggled to remember what the doctor just called it. The Chesterfield Day, ma'am. Dr. Kent nodded, but still frowned a bit. And how did you come to hurt your head? Oh, Tom said, not out of being stupid, but just being anxious. I fell and hit just the right spot. Tripped over a stone in the street, I suppose. Dr. Kent tried to imagine how someone might trip over a small rock in the street, but continued. Can you see okay? The doctor said, as she went through a checklist of symptoms, most of which Tom said no to. Well, it doesn't sound like you have a concussion. You might put some ice on the bump, maybe 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off. Some ice in a towel, not directly on the skin. Try some Tylenol if you're having pain, but I wouldn't do aspirin. And maybe have a shower and a good night's sleep. Relax. Come back in here, and if you're not feeling better by tomorrow. Yes, ma'am, Tom said. He was about to put on his cap and leave the room, as the doctor had opened the door to the exam room, but he stopped and took a deep breath, gathering the bravery to take a chance. Ma'am, doctor, since I'm here, do you have any medicines that might help my friend and his leg? The doctor shook her head. I'm sorry, Tom, but I can't prescribe anything without examining the patient. Doesn't your friend have his own doctor where you live? Tom nodded. I suppose so, ma'am, but our doctor didn't seem to be able to help him. I don't think he has the right medicines. I reckon he needs a new medicine, something that might help someone with a real sore leg. The doctor shrugged. That sounds like some kind of infection. His doctor should be able to treat that with a broad-spectrum antibiotic, but it's not ethical for me to try to venture a guess. Do you know if they've tried anything like that? I would really have to examine him, have him go back to his doctor, or even to the ER if he's not better. If it's what I think it might be, you don't want to ignore a bacterial infection and have it go systemic. Dr. Kent asked a few more questions on things that to Tom sounded like gibberish, using a lot of unfamiliar words and terms. She had him sign a paper in her folder in her hands and ask how he came to be at the clinic. Dr. Kent nodded as he spoke. I got to town on the train last night. Tom hesitated again, then pressed. Is there anywhere I can get a salve for my friend? Something new that might work better than what we have back home? I doubt we have anything here in Chesterfield that's over the counter that you wouldn't have where you live. Neosporin ointment or one of those wouldn't be strong enough if the infection is as bad as you say. He probably needs a doctor right away. All the antibiotics that might work are sold only by prescription. She glanced at her watch and extended her hand again. Well, I need to head over and check in on some of the elderly patients at Jefferson Manor. Good luck, Tom. I hope you feel better, and good luck with your friend. Dr. Kent nodded and left the room first, just as the nurse arrived at the doorway. All done? The nurse asked Tom. Yes, ma'am, Tom said, trying to hide his disappointment in what Dr. Kent told him. What's over the counter, ma'am? It means a medicine that you don't need a prescription to buy. Why, did Dr. Kent say you needed something like that? She recommended something for my friend. An antibiotic? The nurse asked. Yes, that's it. We don't sell that at the general store in any of our salves or powders, and the doctor said my friend Sam needed that for his leg. He fell off his horse when we were riding up in the hills and cut his right leg through his knickers, see, and Tom stopped himself short, fearing he would say too much and not be able to explain it. Look at me running on. Heaven's sakes alive. The nurse chuckled a little bit at Tom's speech and demeanor. Are you all right? Seems like you're taking this whole Chesterfield Day thing quite to heart. How's your head feel? A little sore, I suppose, and my head aches, but I'm all right, Tom said. Let's go and see your friend, Laurel. Is she your girlfriend? Tom startled at the woman's question. She was helping me get through town. I lost my way, and I thought I knew the way, but she helped me out. I'm just visiting, and I'm not accustomed to the town, I suppose. Tom almost chucked up saying that, knowing that he had been born and raised in Chesterfield, and he was in Chesterfield and could barely recognize it as his own same town. I'll let you go and see. I'm sure she'll help you out, maybe get you home. It's getting late. The lobby is just out where you came, down the hall and to the left. Good luck now. Tom had been away about 15 minutes when he walked down the hall. He smiled and nodded to Laurel as she sat. Tom stood until Laurel motioned him to sit down. Laurel wondered what his hesitation was and thought maybe he was dizzy and didn't realize it was Tom's manners, waiting to be asked to sit. "So," Laurel said to Tom, "what did they say?" Tom frowned a second, not knowing how to start. "It was a woman doctor," Tom said, marveling at that alone. "So," Laurel said, "I told you, we have a lot of those. What did she say? Are you okay?" "I think she wants to talk to you. They asked if I came here with anyone. They said I needed to give them permission to talk to you." Tom laughed and shrugged. "Is there a zoo nearby? They said I needed to give permission for them to talk to you because of the hippo. I don't know what that means. Do they have hippopotamus nearby?" Laurel thought a moment about what Tom was saying. Then she realized HIPAA, the law that requires a patient's permission to divulge private health information. She was just reading about it for her intro to medicine class, and had had her mom sign forms about that when her mom was in the hospital last year. HIPAA, Laurel said, knowing that Tom would never understand that in his current state. It's an acronym for something about health information. It's about a law with a doctor just being discreet. They don't want to talk to me about your condition behind your back, is all, Laurel said. "That's very considerate toward the patients, I suppose," Tom said, unknowingly capturing the essence of the HIPAA law without realizing it. "I signed a form for it." Just as he said that, the nurse called from the desk again. "Ms. Humphrey? Laurel Humphrey?" Tom watched as Laurel got up and approached the desk, where the nurse and Dr. Kent consulted briefly in hushed tones. He saw Laurel nodding a lot, and the nurse gave Laurel a pamphlet and a sheet of paper. Laurel nodded again several times and then came back. "We can go," Laurel said. "They told me how I can help." "May I see that?" Tom asked, nodding toward the pamphlet the nurse had given Laurel. Laurel hesitated, but handed it over to Tom. Maybe it would do the dirty work for her, she thought. Tom looked at the pamphlet on glossy purple paper, folded in thirds with a headline in white letters, "When Someone You Love Has a Mental Illness." Tom scowled. "What's mental illness? Does that mean me? Do they think I've gone mad or something?" Laurel gently took the pamphlet out of his hand. "I'm sure there's some kind of mistake," she said, putting the pamphlet and the other paper in her purse. "We should probably get going." Tom shrugged. "But where do we go?" Laurel took Tom's hand and led him back toward the lobby and the sliding glass doors. "Come on, I have an idea."